I'll nominate Councillor Garneau.
Yes, I do.
Move and be closed.
All right, thank you, Briar. All right, so we'll move on then to the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? All right, seeing none, could I get a mover, Councillor Miller, and a seconder, Councillor Coleman? All those in favor? All right, and that carries. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest they wish to declare? All right, seeing none, we will move on. If one arises during the court, just let us know. So we do not have any written appeals. So this is now the opportunity to ask whether there is anyone here today who wishes to make an appeal before the court. And I don't see any members of the public, and I don't see anyone online. So I'm not sure that we need a resolution then to consider oral appeals if we don't have any. And my experts are nodding in the back. All right. So we'll take a second. Second appeal. So I think there's no need at that point to deliberate. The engineer's report is here. We need a resolution to accept that, or? All right, seeing none, I think that's it then. So Councillor Miller.
I was wondering if we could take this opportunity, Madam Chair, to just ask the engineer a couple questions.
Sure, let's do that. We've got some time.
We do have some time. We drove here anyway, so we might as well talk about it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this was asked last time, but so I apologize. But you talked in your report about significant areas to the east and the northwest convey overland waters to the drain. When works are being done to the drain, are those lands going to be assessed as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, yes, those lands are going to be assessed. What I was referring to there are lands to the northwest around Middletown Line and north of Highway 403, and lands to the east, which are, let's say, between Golf Links Road and Third Concession, which did not used to be in the old report on the Lowe's Amy drain, and had the county done maintenance work on this drain, they would have had to use the schedule that's there before. Now, those lands they truly should be in it. They weren't in it before, but it's incorrect. So they truly should be in it, and yes, they are a part of Schedule B in my report here, which the county drainage superintendent will use to assess out accordingly, including those lands, yes.
So, do those landowners, are they aware that they're now in that drain?
Yeah, again, through the chair. Every landowner that is assessed in this report for future maintenance and a cost under the actual cost of the report that I prepared here was received notice for the meeting that we had in Burford back in January, for the meeting that we had in February, and today's meeting. So everybody has received notice, yes.
Correct. A couple other questions through you, Madam Chair. In your report, and I've not seen this in other drainage reports, you suggest breaking down the drain into sections and to help assess costs of only selections require maintenance. Before, it was always what I've seen is you'd have the main drain and then you'd have branches. So if branches being worked on, they would just be assessed. So is that done regular? Is that done? Is that a fairly common thing to break down drains like this one, which is just one big open drain into sections? Have you done this before? Through
the chair, yes, K-Smart Associates, we've been doing the interval-based breakdown for many years, long before I've been there. I do need to check some other engineers' reports, but the whole mentality of that is when there is work done section by section on a drain, you only assess out the cost for maintenance work to lands that are upstream of that.
Right.
So then it becomes a bit of an exercise for the drainage superintendent to figure out what lands are upstream of that. If you're just looking straight at a map, it's not so obvious that north is what's upstream or that. So when we decide to break sections down, as in here's the area north of the 403 and south of the 403, if it's the landowners north of the 403 in interval 4 on our project that needed work, then it's a little bit more easier for the superintendent to be able to take interval 4 in our schedule and just use that interval and interval 5, which is the upstream section. Just a little bit easier to break it down. Historically, they always just kind of did it themselves. So yes, I think that kind of covers everything. In this case, the county is going to be, as far as I'm aware, cleaning out the Lower Zambie drain from bottom to top wholesale. So that isn't really needed right now, the work that Shannon's going to be doing, but it's for when you have to do spot work. It's a little bit easier.
Okay, like I said, I've not seen a drainage report till this one, so.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. So, I wanted to ask about the culverts, and the culverts are all private. And I think there's 9 culverts. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that only one doesn't meet today's standards. And if they have to rebuild it, they'd have to go to today's standards. Is that, am I correct on that?
Yeah, very close. Yeah, good catch. All the culverts on the Lower Zambie drain are private. That's correct. They in the last report or even prior, I should have double checked the dates. But going back, whether it be in the 60s or the 50s, one of the last reports, they did work deepening this drain. The engineer wrote in the report what size a culvert would be required at each location if someone was to do it privately themselves. They then gave allowances to those owners based on what that size is. So at the bottom end, it would need to be bigger size, so they got more allowances, dollars back than someone at the top end. When we're saying one isn't size to today's standards, technically it just means that one is in size to the standard that was stated in the 1962 report. I just took the 1962 report, all of the sizes that engineer had listed, and one of them that we have found isn't the right size, but it's basically right at the top end, and it's really only going to affect them. It's just in a farm field. If it gets overtopped, it gets overtopped. It's not a big deal. But since they are all private, and I had this discussion with Shannon prior to finishing the report, ultimately, if anyone's going to install a culvert on this drain privately, they are just required to meet the Conservation Authority's regulations. I think, is it GRCA in this area? I can't recall exactly, but the Conservation Authority they would have to meet their regulation for what sizing they would need to be. And the discussion that Shannon and I had that as a superintendent, it ultimately doesn't really matter to her. We have these minimum sizes which were stated from the previous engineer's report, which I decided to just restate and put back in here. Here's a minimum. But if GRCA has a higher standard that an owner needs to abide by, and they're doing this privately because it's not under the drain, then they have to do that. Yes.
So I guess, yeah, you answered my question though. So the one that is, quote, undersized isn't an issue at this
It's not an issue. No.
Okay, and then I wanted to ask, you said all culverts are private in this drain, and it goes back to the 60s when allowances were given. In other drains, is that the case for all other drains? Culverts on private lands are private? They're private. They got to be looked after or replaced at the expense of that landowner, is that correct?
Not every single report, drain report would be that way. Going back to the 60s timeline, it would be that way. Back in the Drainage Act written at that time, because the Drainage Act has gone through multiple changes over the years. And at that time, Shannon actually one that pointed this out to me years ago in her review of it, that any culverts, field access culverts that were installed even as a part of the project, if it was done in the 60s, would still then just be private culverts. But I can't say wholesale that every culvert on a drain is private. We are, nowadays, if I was doing a new drain and putting in culverts because if I was just putting in a new ditch that wasn't there before and putting in a culvert, I probably would write it as being a part of the drain report. And therefore, there being responsibility shared of the watershed for costs in the future. So there's not an easy answer to it. Most of the time for the old ones, that is like this, where they are private. Specifically in this case, they never even did construct these when they did the drain. All these were done privately, like the people put them in themselves. But even in the drains in the 1960s, some that could have been constructed during the project, the way the act was written at that time is they're not actually to be a part of the drain after it's done. So it's just because things have changed over time. Yeah. So there's not a straightforward answer to that.
Yeah, I wish you could say it was black or white simply because
know.
we do have one landowner very upset at the cost of they had to replace a culvert and they were told it's private. You got to carry the full weight of that. So it can be a big deal. So
Just to add on to that, sorry. Yeah, no, definitely. I wish it was more black and white, that it was one way or the other. It's been a mismatch of different things over the years. It isn't entirely the case that they have to do it themselves. If they were to file a request under the Drainage Act, the Drainage Act does allow for culverts to be installed under the drain and assessed out to the watershed. I am working on a couple of those right now. So they wouldn't have to be them. I'd have to look at the specific case there, but probably at that time, they're just being told, okay, this is private, so it's up to you. But if they were to go through the process, they could initiate a Drainage Act project and bring it under a new culvert under the Drainage Act and share the costs. It can be done. But it does get messy when one owner does that, but then their neighbors is private too. So, I mean, it's not easily fair and everything, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And last question, Madam Chair, and that has to do with water quality, and I don't see anything in there on that, and that's fine. But we have another drainage report after this where they do talk about water quality. And there's been more of an emphasis to reduce nitrates, to reduce phosphor loads going into the Lake Erie. And when we look at all the nitrates, I'll just use that as an example. It changes depending on the time of year, but about 70% of it come from non-point sources, in other words, agricultural sources, whereas 30% comes from wastewater treatment plants. I was always surprised by that. I thought more would come from the wastewater treatment plants. So given that, this is, again, it's an open ditch the whole way. Would the water quality be better, the same, or worse cleaning up, or any thoughts on that? And can we do anything to improve water quality when we do these municipal drains? And like I say, the next drainage report actually talks a little bit about that. So that's why I'm asking you today.
Through the chair, another one that's probably not so simple to state. Some of K-Smart's reports do have a section that discusses nothing but clean water to be discharged. I myself usually pull that clause out. I just kind of keep the focus of a drain report on drains. Truthfully, the Ministry of Environment is here for a reason. If there really is a discharge of something that's not clean water, they will handle it, and maybe it goes through the county to them. But so I haven't always written it in there. There are things we can do. We have conferences every year where we're discussing about nitrates and phosphorus, and all of that is a big concern. And yes, farming applications are a big concern. It's a little tougher when it's not necessarily a point source, but I mean, it's coming in every field versus a wastewater treatment plant is a bit more of a point source. You can directly isolate where you're getting that contamination. There are things that I think will be done more in the future. But they have to be written in the report. Things, like you say, things we can do. I would say that unless an owner is just doing it on their own accord, or working with the county and the county's paying for some sort of mitigation measure. Things like this would be probably best written in the report if we want to be able to maintain them by using the drainage report and the watershed upstream, or else it's just put in and then it's like, whose responsibility is it? So under this report, we are just doing a section 76 where we're updating the maintenance schedules. There's potential in the future. I haven't really done it yet, but there's potential in the future that could be written directly into a new report. There are owners, farmers who are approaching us with that on the beginning of a job. There are things we've talked about at conferences. And when you say the water quality better or worse, it's hard to say exactly. I know when you do have grasses in the bottom of the ditch, there could be an improved water quality characteristic from that, but it's a balance. So with all of the grass growing up in the bottom of the ditch, the water's not flowing that well and tiles are underwater. So it is a bit of a balance. Yeah. With a lot of new drains for us, for tile drains, we do implement like a stilling basin at the bottom end of a big tile so that it's more or less for the dissipation of the energy rushing out of the pipe. But it does allow for sediments to settle out in a single location as opposed to carrying on downstream, and then that also saves for maintenance costs in the future. So again, not a simple one, but you're asking the right questions for sure.
Yeah, like I said, I know you didn't mention it, but I think water quality's got to be more of the conversation when we sit around and talk about municipal drains, so.
That's good.
Just
Yeah.
think about it.
I will keep thinking about it.
When you
for
lay
sure.
your head on your pillow tonight.
Yeah, I will, definitely will.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for all the questions.
No, and I let us stray a bit, recognizing we are on a court for a specific drain, because I think you raised some good philosophical questions, Councillor Miller, and I'm watching key staff nod at the back of the room, so perhaps we can take away that discussion and see whether maybe there's a time that things return to the council table for some of these discussions. Also reflecting, I think, on Councillor Miller's questions, there's a lot of professional discretion that our engineers have when they bring forward a drain report to us, and I think at times that can be challenging for our property owners because things aren't always the same across different files. So perhaps with that in mind, I see our General Manager of Strategic Initiatives here, as well as the Drainage Superintendent. Maybe we can think about some communications products. I'm not sure what's on the website right now about drainage, but it might help to make sure as we're rolling out our drain program again, speaking to those generalities. I did see the Drainage Superintendent look like she wanted to say something. Did you still want to?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just to be clear, under the two reports that you're seeing tonight, one is a Section 76, which is an update to a maintenance schedule. The other is a Section 78, which allows a lot more freedom for these water quality initiatives. So under Section 76, the engineer is very bound by what is allowed under the provincial legislation. So unfortunately, Curtis does not have an opportunity to address any water quality under his report. So I'm pretty sure that's probably why that section was left out under this report. I just wanted to make that clear, so.
Section 76, Section 78, yeah, those things kind of go over my head, but I appreciate the
Yeah.
explanation.
Okay, no, we might need a cheat sheet primer. That might help the court going forward. All right, thank you. So recognizing we've wandered a little bit here, but we didn't have any appeals. We've done our communications. I think if there's no further business, we will adjourn the court.